Okay, make sure that doesn't fall.
All right, welcome back everyone. Steve here and Nikki.
Hey everyone.
Here from Costa Rica, and today we're going to talk about an exciting topic, but a very important one, and that is the Costa Rica weather, storms in Costa Rica, right?
Yes.
All right, so I don't know if you've been watching the news, but Hurricane Eta has just passed by. Now, it did not make direct contact with Costa Rica, but Hurricane 4, Category 4 hurricane, and so it did just graze. It hit, made landfall in Nicaragua to the north. But just because it hits in Nicaragua doesn't mean the surrounding countries don't feel it. And so we've been getting hit with these bands of rain throughout the country, causing great trouble. Flooding, mudslides, roads taken out, becoming impassable. So a lot of stuff happens with it. So this is pretty cool. It was a Hurricane 5 off the coast. I don't know if you caught that. Downgraded to a level 4 before it hit. But Nicaragua got hit pretty bad. But we had over 700 people in Costa Rica who were evacuated, had to leave their homes and went into some shelters, so that was pretty neat, or not neat, but pretty big deal. So Costa Rica gets a lot of severe weather though.
It's been cold.
Yeah,
I just know I'm cold.
It has brought the temperature down, that's for sure.
It is unlike the Colorado clothes that I brought are pulled out because it's cold. So.
Now you have to understand that for us, cold now is in the 70s,
yes.
Not in the 90s that we're used to anymore. But Costa Rica is actually hit by a lot of tropical storms. We sit right north of the equator, 10 degrees north of the equator, and the country's only 270 miles across, east to west there. And so we got separated by the Pacific and the Caribbean Ocean. Caribbean Sea is the country there, 270 miles. And so you get the cool air from the Pacific, warm air from the tropics, from the Caribbean coming through, and it just creates these crazy storms. Right.
We've been through a couple of them, huh?
Been through a couple of them. So let's talk about that real quick. There's 3 very notable storms that have happened since we first came here. We came here in 2017. Oh, no, sorry, 2015. Sorry, 2015.
No, I was going to say earlier than that. Yeah, 15.
Yep. And just right after our anniversary. Do you remember what happened right after our anniversary of being here? Our 1 year of being here?
Yeah, it rained. There was that well, it wasn't a hurricane.
It was.
Was it a hurricane? Mm-hmm. I know it just rained, and I was really scared. It was a lot of rain. We were prepared, I think.
Yeah, fairly prepared. And we're going to talk to you. We're going to give you some great tips on how to be prepared, so make sure you stay tuned. But right after we got here, or a year after we got here, Hurricane Otto, the very first hurricane to actually make landfall in Costa Rica, the first one on record since they started keeping records back in, I think it was the 1800s, first one to hit landfall in Costa Rica. It was only a Category 3, still pretty severe though, but by the time it got to us, it hit on the Caribbean side. And so by the time it crossed over the mountains and got to us, it had weakened considerably.
It had, but I will tell you, I've never been so scared in my life. It was scary. It was scary.
A lot of wind, and that's what characterizes a lot of times the severity of the tropical storm. Whether, what severity category of hurricane it is based off of the wind. But sometimes that's not the biggest issue, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So that was Hurricane Otto. Really shook. A lot of wind,
yeah.
A lot of rain, but it kind of came and went relatively quickly, right?
Yeah, but we had a few days after that were still kind of like this, all overcasted and cold.
So then a year later, we had our next big event, the next major storm here, and that was in 2017 in October, was Tropical Storm Nate. Now that one never made hurricane level. It was only a Tropical Storm Category 1. But it ended up being the most costly storm in Costa Rica history. It flooded bad. There was floods all over the place. It rained what seemed like forever, right?
Forever. It felt like it was never going to end. And we were cut off from the world for a while because the floods kind of took the roads out, so I couldn't even go grocery shopping.
Do you remember where we lived at that time? So this was in 2017.
We were on the top of Tamarindo, on a hill in the back part of Tamarindo. So we were still really close to town, but I was cut off.
Yeah, and we lived in a condominium unit, 3 stories tall. Next to us was empty lots, and it rained so much that year. And with the little bit of wind, many of those trees, those big, huge trees, mature trees, fell over.
We lost a lot of trees and a lot of trees.
The ground just became too saturated. It couldn't handle moisture. and it just sloughed off and took some of the trees down with it. Didn't take much wind at all to just give them a push and knock them
Yeah.
over.
That
Right.
was that was a scary one too. I think I was ready more for that one because I had been through a tropical storm, but still,
So
I don't
that-
think you're ever ready for them.
So that was 2017, and we haven't had a major tropical storm hurricane hit Costa Rica since then until just now. We're in November of 2020 here. It started Halloween was when it became a tropical storm, but Eta came by. Fortunately, kind of dodged us a little bit and went up north, but as we mentioned earlier, still some areas of Costa Rica, severe flooding down near Osa in the Central
Yeah.
Valley area. There's been some flooding. So all over the country, they're experiencing kind of pockets depending on what these rain bands are doing that are spinning off of this major storm.
The roads are washing out to a lot of roads that are just they crumble. So I wouldn't, if you don't need to travel right now during these times, stay home.
Yeah, 27, Highway 27, it got washed out. A big slough came down across the road there. So make sure you check in road conditions if you're going to travel now, and stay home if you can. So let's talk a little bit about the major problems of storms. And so the first thing, like we've been mentioning here, is flooding. That's probably the
Yeah.
biggest issue for Costa Rica when it comes to storms, right?
I would say flooding and the roads collapsing. So
Yeah.
those are the two things I see.
So we have rainy season. Different parts of Costa Rica experience rainy season at different times of the year. So if you're coming to travel and visit, make sure you check in and find out what the weather's going to be like based off of the month you're in and the region you're in. Here in northern Guanacaste region, near Tamarindo, we're in Marbella, just south of that, down to Nosara. This whole area right here, the rainy season is pretty much solid in October. So it starts picking up a little bit September, late August,
Yeah.
September, and then it rains really heavy in October. We're into November, and so it's going to peter out and die off with the exception of these tropical storms running through. The rainy season itself will taper off starting December 1st.
December to January.
We probably won't have any rain.
Might see a little if we're lucky, but yeah.
Yeah.
Usually after November we don't see much.
Yep. So we're coming to the tail end, but we just caught the tail end of the storm that just ripped through, and so that's why a lot of this flooding. But you got to watch out because especially if you live near rivers, creeks, a lot of times these things are dry in dry season. So if you're going to buy property or something like that, you may see there's a dry creek bed or something, thinking it's completely safe, but rainy season, that's not always the case, is it?
Yeah, no. I recommend sitting on the property for a good year and watching what happens during the rainy season.
Definitely. So rising waters and, even the highest quality homes are not immune to flooding. So things happen over time, leaks develop, and so the amount of water that comes down in some of these rainstorms, and especially when you get a tropical storm like this coming through and just dumping, you can get washed out of even a nice home. So
Yeah.
make sure that you've got everything in good repair and you're keeping up on things, no leaks have developed, and then just be prepared. So the next thing we want to talk about here is lightning. A lot of times these thunderstorms bring with them a huge amount of lightning, and so for me, it's lightning like I've never experienced before. Sometimes camping in the mountains of Colorado, we would experience some that were pretty close and boomers, but we've experienced some.
Nothing like this.
We've experienced some that have just rocked the house, right? And we've got concrete and rebar structures here, and
It shakes the pictures off the walls. So yeah, no, nothing like that in Colorado for me.
So the lightning storms can get intense, but all that electricity and all that excitement and stuff, it's pretty rare that someone actually gets hurt by the lightning, right? Lightning strikes just don't hit you very often. So from a human risk standpoint or animal risk standpoint, the risk is pretty low that you're going to get hit by lightning. But they are scary, right?
Inside, yeah.
Yeah. However, not everything is immune to that lightning. That lightning wreaks havoc on the things we have, right? Our possessions, our electronics.
Yeah, our electronics have taken a beating. Our computers and phones and the AC units, and you need to unplug things.
Yeah.
So
Now, we have issues with power surges and things on regular, normal sunny days, and so that's nothing new. However, with the lightning storms, a lot of times come trip breakers, and so the more you're tripping that breaker, the more you put that stress on those components of the electronics, the more it wears them down. And the number of lightning storms we have, especially during rainy season, is an issue for those, yeah?
yeah, so surge protector.
Well, can you name a couple of things? What have we
Yeah.
replaced since we've been here, like electronic-wise, you think, from...
A couple computers, some cell phones, especially after when we were in Tam, and not as much out here, but we were a couple coffee pots, microwave.
We've lost a lot of different appliances and just random things. And so musical instruments. I had a foot pedal for my guitar that just burnt out. So we'll get to some protection and some tips on that here in a little bit as well. But electronics really take a hit from the tropical storms, the lightning storms that come through. So the last one we want to talk about on this is the wind. And as we mentioned at the beginning, that's what determines what level, what category of hurricane it is the wind, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
yes.
Yeah, this invisible force is just amazing, and it can tear through things. Now, where we live, as we mentioned in northern Costa Rica, northwest in Guanacaste, we have a season of wind actually that lasts for weeks to months, depending on how severe it is. But where the winds will come down off of Lake Nicaragua and shoot out the coast, basically from the top of the peninsula, Nicoya Peninsula, all the way to the bottom. But it gets very strong right through this Tamarindo, Marbella, Nosara area here, Flamingo region.
Call it windy season.
Yeah, that's windy season.
That's windy season.
And when is windy season?
Windy season seems to start about, just January and go to like March, April, about May.
March. Right,
March.
April I think is one of my favorites because it starts to calm down a little bit before the rain. But but definitely February it's a lot of wind, but it's not all bad. So some of us don't really like the wind, but it's great for surfers because you get a great offshore breeze or wind, and so it can form some nice waves, get a little bit glassy out there, kind of nice. So wind can be great if it's heading in the right direction, and during that time it usually does. But it can also be terrible. Storms that race through these great pressure changes and so forth, and that they can really cause more damage than like lightning. We were just very afraid of lightning, but it's those things we don't see sometimes that are even more dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we talk in our blog a little bit about how some of the structures for the low-income people, they make their homes out of the corrugated tin for a roof, and sometimes that'll come off and be like a sail flying through the air. Limbs, we've lost limbs, and they've come down and hit the top of the house on us during some of the storms. We actually have to be careful because there's a tree out in the driveway that's notorious for losing limbs, and so we make sure we don't park under it, especially during those storms.
Yeah.
Cool.
What else do you have on there?
All right, so let's talk about some of the tips we have for them to be prepared. And I've got some props out here, brought some things. So Nikki's been over here making some coffee for us with one of the things on our list. So when the power goes out because of a storm, sometimes you can't use your instant coffee pot, what have you. And so we actually prefer coffee this way. This is a Costa Rican coffee pot, and you simply pour hot water over the top of it. And so as she's finishing making some coffee for us here, we want to talk about that. So that's one way to kind of prepare for a storm, is to get yourself a nice soothing cup of hot coffee. Sometimes it can help you to relax, that soothing. Sometimes it can also help to stimulate you if you're really cold, tired, or warm you up if you're cold. And so coffee is just great, and so we love coffee. And so that's our way around it in a storm, is the coffee maker. Let's start off with keeping emergency supplies together. So this is actually tip number one, is keep your supplies together. So nothing is worse in an emergency than needing something, needing a tool, needing something of an emergency nature, and not being able to find it, right? Mm-hmm. Searching around in the dark, what have you. Right, so keep your things together. One of the things you need to keep together is this first item right here. This is our little pocket one that we put in our backpacks and stuff, but this is a first aid kit. Okay, and so we say keep your first aid kit handy. A lot of times we'll throw those in the back of the closet or someplace under the counter, back of the cabinet. Make sure you have it easily accessible, especially if you get that alert that there's severe weather coming. Now, most of these tips are universal. They're going to work anywhere. Yeah. But some a little bit more to Costa Rica. But first aid kit, make sure you have that handy. The next thing on the list is extra water. Okay, so we buy the big, I think they're in liters. So, but it's probably about, I don't know, 5 gallons or so jug of water, and we use that as our backup for our pure water. Now, if we have a storm coming, we also have a jug with a little, the little kind you put in the refrigerator there, dispenser on it, that we keep next to the sink, so we have little thing we can use to wash our hands, wash some dishes real quick, that kind of thing.
I always recommend having water.
Yeah.
In Costa Rica, you just need backup of water.
So in flood situations, there can be contamination of the groundwater of your water source, if you have a pipe break, something like that, or if the power has gone out to the pump station that supplies your water. Sometimes that happens, and so we'll go without water for a while due to that in the storm. So make sure you have that fresh water. The fourth thing on the list is fresh foods can spoil with the loss of power. So we eat a lot of vegetables.
Yeah, a lot. That's almost all we eat.
Yeah, so we don't have a whole lot of dry goods. We do have rice and beans that we have on hand all the time. They're a staple because I love them, and that's what we eat. But you also want to make sure you have maybe some canned foods or some of those dried noodles, things like that, that you can prepare in the event you lose power and your refrigerator stops working, and you can't keep produce and things.
Yeah, and what was that, 4 years ago? We had no access to power or anything like that for over 4 days. And then it was on and off, so you really want to make sure you're at least stocked for about a week. I try to make sure we have at least a week's worth of food before a big storm hits.
Yep. Now, we mentioned flooding earlier, and one of the things I did forget to mention, we talked about trees falling over. The power in the country is through overhead lines.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when one of those trees loses its grip and falls over, you're going to lose power because it's going to bring the lines down with it. And so, yeah, sometimes that'll happen, or the wind can knock it over.
Which comes into, I think, yeah, and you have on there.
Yep.
Which is our lantern. I highly recommend getting lanterns. Flashlights are good too, but I love these little lanterns.
We actually have, on our blog, you can see a link to one that actually is a combo. It has a flashlight and a lantern. We love the lantern because it's very bright. It works very well with these LEDs. But we use it to play cards, to find things in the kitchen.
I put them around the pool when we're having pool parties. So yeah, I really like the lanterns. So, I like the ones that have the flashlight on the end of them. So I have some of those coming.
So you can shine a beam, yep. This is the older model. We've put the newer one on our blog, like I mentioned. But yeah, flashlights and lanterns. Now, everyone always says, oh, I've got my phone. I got my cell phone, so I'm going to just keep my cell phone handy. But what happens is, and one of the things we want to talk about is keeping those things charged. That's going to be the next thing on the list. Now, you may use your cell phone as a flashlight, but that's going to use the battery, right?
And they go quick, especially if you're watching like Netflix or something like that. Those batteries are usually gone within a few hours. So when you go for about 4 or 5 days with no power, if you need them for emergencies, which people were worried a few years ago, so you need to be able to communicate back and forth, which is battery backups.
Battery backup's the next thing on the list. So if you have the flashlights and things, that'll help save some of the battery life for your phones, your tablets, but eventually they're going to run out. So you're going to want the battery backups, the little backpack things. These are great to throw in your purse to go to the beach or what have you, your beach bag.
Traveling, I always carry one. So
But power is very necessary, not just for entertainment, like watching Netflix, but also safety, right? For calling for help, communicating with others who may be in trouble, finding out if the roads are washed out, getting news updates. All of that usually comes to us, that media comes to us through our electronics, through our phones and things now. And so you really need to make sure you have those things charged from a safety standpoint, as well as, cure the boredom, right? Well,
I try to have an extra phone as nothing but emergency, so the kids can watch Netflix or whatever, they would read their Kindles or whatever. But we always have a phone that's not used unless it's only turned on if we need to call out.
Now, the last tip thing we had on our list was surge protectors. And so we have surge protectors all throughout the house. We actually have a battery backup surge protector that supplies our internet. So that is excellent. So sometimes we'll lose power, but we'll still have the internet because the battery backup kicks in, and we're using a radio frequency technology for our internet, and so it stays on. And so that's excellent. So you might want to check into the battery backup option, not just to recharge things, but also to stay connected in some cases.
I like the battery backup. It makes it so we can still work when we lose power. So
so that one has a surge protector built in for our internet, and also we can recharge things off of that. But we recommend having a surge protector on anything that you don't want to fry, especially in Costa Rica. We experience those fluctuations constantly in good weather.
Yeah, so bad weather, it's just, and then if you're not using it, just unplug it. So
unplug it, excellent. So unplugging it, this is a great bonus tip right here, because what it will do is not only protect you from those freak lightning storms that could happen without warning, and or if you're out and about and you forgot you didn't unplug it, you know, a storm comes. But it'll also keep your energy bills down.
Yeah, especially here. In most of Central America, unplugging things keeps those electric bills down.
It's amazing how much just that little bit of trickle can pull
Yeah.
off and run your bill up. So, but either way, if it's unplugged and a lightning hits your home, you're not going to fry your electronics. You're not going to have to replace it. So, surge protectors is the top tip probably on the list.
Yep. So I think that's got them covered.
That's got you covered for weather. Make sure you leave us a comment down below. What experience have you had with the weather in Costa Rica? How has it rocked you?
What do you put in your emergency kits?
I do want to leave on a closing thought of we feel safe here with the weather. Like we mentioned, the only hurricane
this
on
time of year.
record to hit Costa Rica happened, that was 4 years ago, but in hundreds of years. And so we feel very safe here with the weather. It does rain a lot, and you just have to be prepared and just know what's coming.
Yeah, don't travel during that time. It's kind of like Colorado blizzards. You don't travel during the blizzards, so just kind of, I like to stay at home and kind of stay in my warm clothes and bunker in. So.
Excellent. Well, anybody has any tips, make sure you leave them down in the comments below. We want
I'll
to get your
leave the
feedback.
link to the blog in the comments too, which has links to the stuff that we showed too. So
Yep. So make sure you're all stocked up and ready and prepared. And if you have any tips of your own, make sure you leave a comment and let us know what you're doing to protect yourself and endure the tropical storms of Costa Rica.
Pura Vida.
Pura Vida. Have a great day.